The Canby Report was produced and recorded on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples.
It's March 27th, 2026, and there are 204 days left until the Vancouver municipal elections. This is the Canby Report. I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield. What a spring break it's been, and a few weeks preceding that.
Oh, yeah. This has been truly some of the most insane council politics during our, dear Lord, 9 years? How long have we been doing this? Many years of doing this podcast. And it is just going to be a delight to tell you all about it. There is so much scuttlebutt coming out of the council. The mayor has really just served us up a delightful dish of defamation and otherwise delicious news. And as the election season heats up, there are many council candidates. But first, of course, we have to remind you of patreon.com/Canby Report, your source for citizen journalism here in the city of Vancouver and its environs.
Let's get 5 new patrons, and then we can actually do this every 2 weeks until the election.
Yes, a thing that we keep saying and do intend to, even if sometimes the CBC calls and then we forget that we didn't actually do an episode.
Go check out that interview. We'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes.
Yes.
Good work, Matthew. Should we dive into it? We have so much to talk about.
We absolutely do. And of course, we would really be just committing journalistic malpractice if we started with anything other than Ken Sim accuses Sean Orr of being a drug dealer.
Mayor Sim apologized to Councilor Orr.
So basically, Ken Sim, during a statement made to Chinese language media and Lenny Zhu, another city councillor, they went out and they said Sean Orr was handing out illegal drugs on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. The stories varied. And basically, he is a drug dealer. And that was reacted to rather strongly by Sean Orr, who wasn't actually in Vancouver at the time.
Mayor Sim called Councilor Orr and apologized.
There has been a considerable amount of fallout over this, particularly the defamation that has occurred. CBC called me the day after, and I spoke at length to their call-in show, and the opinions were pretty universal. I think Mayor Sim should have resigned. I think Councillor Zhu should have resigned. This whole thing is an embarrassment to the city, and I think it is unbecoming of the mayor. The mayor, however, has not taken my advice and has instead continued to, if not defend his position, try to communicate with Councillor.
Matthew, what Ken Sim did was he called Councilor Orr and apologized profusely.
Yes, that was, of course, because, and to quote Councilor Orr, he accused me of trafficking illegal drugs. He accused me of being a criminal. This has, of course, led to a lawsuit and really very interesting questions on whether or not Ken Sim can avail himself of the defenses against defamation and slander and libel that are available to political candidates, either in a public or private context, and whether his subsequent actions are sufficient to avoid prosecution damages being assigned to him under those statutes.
He did call Councilor Orr, though, and he did apologize.
He absolutely apologized. And of course, we know that because he stated so 18 or 19 times or so in a press conference, during which that was the only thing he said. There are defenses to defamation, and honest mistake is one of them. That was not something that Mayor Sim said that he did. But remind me, what did he do?
He called Councilor Orr and apologized.
Yes.
And, it was wild to watch that clip, and journalists were like, what the fuck is happening? Because they did their proper diligence and asked every permutation of a question they could to try to get anything out of him. What came out like a few days later or a week later was Ken Sim admits someone showed him a photograph at a party and said this was Sean Orr, and that's where the source of this was. Naturally, I had to make the Nickelback meme of look at this photograph of a like hastily drawn in paint image of Sean Orr-esque person doing drugs, stealing drugs. And that did well on our social media, I will say.
I mean,
it's the stupidest fucking story, Matthew.
This is total bullshit. It's bullshit. It's like, let's be real about what this was. This is Ken Sim and Lenny Zhu thinking that they can get away speaking out of both sides of their faces to Chinese language media versus English language media. And that is both disrespectful to the Chinese community and unbecoming of a mayor or city councilor. This isn't what politics is supposed to be like. You can't lie like this. There have to be consequences. He should have resigned. It was the only dignified thing that he should have done.
It's also wild that Lenny Zhao is still on council with him, that Mike Klass and Peter Meisner, I mean, I don't think Montague has any morals involved in this, but Lisa Dominato, Sir Kirby Young, why are these people still in this party? No one has held them to account because they are going down with this ship.
Like, Lisa Dominato in particular, like, I understand Brian Montague, like, just, you know, not running and whatever, who cares? But, like, Lisa Dominato and Sarah Kirby Young have taken principal stands in the past and left parties in the past over things that were, like, frankly, not exactly the same, but I think arguably equally abhorrent, not to, like, pit, you know, the Sochi community against, you know, cultural minorities, but, like, they're both completely unacceptable, and they were right to leave then, and they're wrong not to leave now. I don't get it.
I think the city is with Sean in this fight. He launched a GoFundMe and raised $45,000 for his legal defense from a lot of different people.
This legal attack. Sean Orr has sued Ken Sim rightly, I think, for defamation, and I think he's going to win. But, like, that's, of course, going to be a lengthy and costly legal battle, and so once you have, of course, donated to patreon.com/Canberra Report, because I don't think we said it a third time, patreon.com/Canberra Report, you could go over and donate to Sean Orr's legal attack fund, because,
and that
course,
website is suekensim.ca.
Well,
he asks for $16 if you can't afford much, because that's the number of times Ken Sim tried to apologize.
My apologies. I exaggerated saying 17 or 18, and of course, perhaps I lost count. Perhaps I was just pulling a number completely out of thin air. But, you know, it's an honest mistake, as opposed, and of course, I have retracted that comment, which is, of course, not something that Ken Sim. What did Ken Sim do, Ian?
He called Councilor Orr and apologized.
If we continue talking about the story, I'm absolutely going to blow my stack. So I think we have to move on to some exciting news about the future. And, of course, the number of candidates that are coming out of the woodwork and fighting for their respective nominations or appointments, as the case may be. So, where is this going? One city.
They are running a contested nomination race for their council, school board, and potentially park board. And there's a lot of names forward. So I'm just going to burn through the names listed for city council. We will put the link to the full profiles on our website, and I think you'll have opinions on a couple of these people. Aaron Chapman, Armour Valor, Ashley Fair, Azim Ali, Caitlin Stockwell, Fabian Contreras, Francis Beulah, Hakone Coyote, Iona Bonamede, Jarrett Hagland, Mike Tan, Peter Waldkirch, and Russell Vong.
Francis Beulah, wow. What
friend of the show.
Friend of the show, obviously. Indeed, a live guest. We've had the privilege of sharing a stage with what we called then the Grande Dame of the Vancouver Press Corps. And now she is from that fourth estate into the political arena herself. You know, go read some of Francis Beulah's stuff that she's written over the years. In particular, note her struggles to build a laneway home series was hilarious and depressing all at the same time. That is a nomination to to watch, to be sure. I also know Jared Hagland, and I think he's a good guy, and I think people should support him.
I've seen within urbanist communities, Russell Vong ran with Candy Stewart's slate last time. Peter Waldkirch is famous for his accordion-inspired pro-urbanist music videos, and he's brought his accordion to city council to cheer on towers. So he's a fun character. I've seen Caitlin Stockwell doing a lot of work on this. Iona Bonamy was a past One City candidate. And this is not to demean any of the other people who I just don't know as much about, but this is quite the interesting slate. So I'm curious to see who comes forward out of this, although One City has not said how many council candidates are actually going to get the green light in the end.
Yeah, I don't think that situation has resolved itself. Or
No.
I actually think that the non-Ken Sim parties are quite possibly sleepwalking into a disaster here, even though Ken Sim has handed them a giant gift. I think they might bungle this thing and lose. I don't really see how we could have completely failed to learn our lesson from the last campaign, but it does seem like we have not learned anything at all. And so, frankly, forces of deception and vibes mayoralty might indeed hold the day again. What a world we live in.
For school board, One City has Christopher Lee, Kareem Haseeb, Krista Sigurdsson, Rory Brown, Sherry Brashears, Steve Cardwell, and Vivek Khanna as candidates. I know Kareem, he's a student activist, and he's on the BC Civil Liberties Association board with me. Steve Cardwell is also a familiar name, as is Krista Sigurdsson, and Vivek Khanna, I think, has been a outspoken advocate for data in school board decisions.
Yeah, I've heard Krista Sigurdsson in particular, and I think she's been a fairly regular contributor on the CBC Parents panel. So I think that that's certainly someone to watch in the One City nominations race. Park Board, there are two candidates, Dominic D'Onofrio and Tyler Peterson, neither of whom I am familiar with.
Yeah, and I can't imagine One City running more than two people for Park, and two seems a reasonable number.
Yeah.
So maybe they both have it. I don't have in front of me when the nomination date is. I think it might be in May, so that because I was looking at their website and they have a bunch of planned door-knocking events with all these candidates. So if you're a One City Party member, go check out their page, get familiar with these people. I suspect they're all super friendly and eager to tell you why you should become a One City member and vote for them.
The Greens have also announced their nominees. They have a slate of people who are running. These are, of course, not quite the official council candidates yet, but these candidates include Annette Riley, Bridget Burns, Camille Dumont, Effie Demeter, Julie Strolski, Kyra Filbert, and Stephanie Smith. Camille Dumont, in particular, was the former head of the Park Board and a general kind of urban agriculture leader that we've covered on the show before.
Annette Riley ran for the Greens in the by-election, so it's good to see her continue to try to put her name forward. And many people on Twitter will know Stephanie Smith. I'll say that. Can't say anything nice.
They say nominees for city council, get to know our nominees and make sure your membership is up to date to vote who becomes our 2026 Green candidates. So they're nominated for the nomination of the Green Party. I think that is not super clear from their website, and certainly, honestly, if I were the Greens communication director, I might clear that up a little bit so that people know that these aren't the actual candidates but they're nominees for candidateship. If that's in fact what they are, again, not totally clear.
I think one criticism of the Vancouver Greens in the past has been it's been a sort of Adrienne Carr show where she just top-down picks who she's going to run with. And I think they're trying to move to a more democratic approach like One City and Cope offer, but it's still unclear from this. One thing that is interesting is another candidate, Andy Lynn, has posted on Twitter that he tried to run for the Greens and was denied a green light, allegedly because he was involved in protests outside a Dallas Brody event at UBC Specifically, someone tried to assault him. He defended himself. And then the Greens are like, we can't have someone defending people and Indigenous people. It's a weird situation. I don't know what's happening there.
I mean, the Greens have decided to make some truly boneheaded decisions so far. I've already talked about that. But avoiding controversial candidates is not, in my mind, the worst decision that the Green Party has made or could make. Certainly, Dallas Brody is abhorrent, and she should indeed be opposed. But if you're going to get involved in street-level dust-ups, you have to be aware that that might have repercussions for near future political campaigns. I think that this might be something that wouldn't have been as big of an issue in a couple of years, but I'm not entirely shocked that the Greens are being cautious here.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the story. I don't know Andy. Scrolling his Instagram, seems like he's been a politics follower and involved in the Greens for a little bit.
Intense looking Instagram page.
This view especially.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit further, make up your own
Just
mind.
Vibrating with passion, truly.
Let's jump over to the Vancouver Liberals, who have announced a few candidates, in addition to some they've already announced, right? They had the floor crossers, Scott Jensen, Victoria Young, Brennan Bastiavansky. Now they have added to their slate Jessica Walton, Michael Wu, and Maura Stillwell.
Yes, Maura Stillwell, the name that may be familiar to some of you who have been followers of Vancouver and environs politics for as long as this podcast has existed. But she is the former MLA for Vancouver Fairview, and of course ran in the 2017 election that saw her lose to Heyman. And perhaps unsurprisingly, it was a seat that got fairly redistributed and, like, demographically was a pretty strong shot for an NDP pickup. She generally was, I think, a good cabinet minister, aside from the fact that she, like myself, stained with the corruption of working for the Christy Clark government. She was thoughtful and considered politician, I thought, during her time in office. So I am certainly interested in where her candidacy takes her.
From the moderate BC Liberals to the BC Conservatives, Michael Wu was a candidate for the Conservatives in, I believe it was 2024 in Burnaby. And to the other side, Jessica Walton is a former student activist and describes herself in her video as a feminist and a socialist.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's the
you
big
know what?
tent.
I will say that, like, Karima Lam has been doing everything right. This is correct. Like, you know, politically, it is good to find people from across the political spectrum so that even if you don't want to back a straight ticket for the party, can pick a couple of the Vancouver Liberals candidates. I think this is a very canny political move on his part.
We'll just have to see if it's too canny by half. You know, are we still in an era when the moderate centrist, like NPA coalition, can reform under a new name? Maybe. Mark Carney did great.
Yeah.
And is doing great, according to Canadians.
And like, this is the question, is like, is Ken Sim, like, enough of an embarrassment to allow a very successful coalition that he built from the last campaign? And admittedly, I think that Kennedy Stewart had a lot to do with that, but by being such a bad mayor, to be clear. Not as bad as Ken Sim has turned out to be, but they're both bad, and we should try another one. But like, that political coalition is the one that won last time, and it is the one that has dominated Vancouver's political establishment for basically the entire history of Vancouver, with some deviations for Cope and team and such. But it's a winning formula in the city, and I don't really think that there's that much fundamental change that has happened to drive people into, like, I don't even know what Ken Sim stands for at this point, like Bitcoin and slander.
Not the former, we'll get back to that, but someone else running For that centrist tent coalition is Rebecca Bly's Vote Vancouver, who has announced its first council candidates as well. These are Rebecca Hasdell, Bhavna Solecki, and Jeff Tioli, none who have prominent roles in municipal politics. I guess Jeff was the former film commissioner of the city, which I didn't know was a role, but that's kind of cool.
You know, it's not a terrible idea to get some new blood into city council. Like, we've been doing this for a really long time, and, you know, as we were talking about earlier, no one ever really goes away. But, there is an extent to which city councils are the training ground for higher political office, cities being creatures of the province and all. There is a important role that junior councillors have in like learning how to play politics that prepares them to take on other leadership roles, whether that's provincially or federally, become mayor. It's good that new folks are getting involved.
Oh yeah, I'm not against that. I just compare these names to like the one city names where you see people who have been involved politically in one way or another, but haven't necessarily put their name forward, or maybe they did and lost in the past. So maybe this will be a great trio, or more likely we will forget Vancouver exists.
And, like, to be fair, the attractiveness of a nomination is always going to be directly proportional to the party's perceived proximity to power. And so perhaps there are reasons why Francis Beulah has elected to run with one city and not Vote Vancouver, as the case may be.
Well, and one city seems to have the momentum, and where Cope had some response to what we discussed on the last episode, the progressive primary pitched by William Azarov. And it seemed like Cope was on the verge of doing something big. There were actually a bunch of rumors coming around. I got some of them that big names are coming forward for Cope's mayoral nomination. And then nothing happened. It got leaked by Jazz Johol that Anjali Appadurai, the one-time attempted BC NDP leadership candidate, was going to seek the nomination. And then she came out and said, no, I'm doing other things. I'm not interested.
Well, that must be nice for her to be on the other side of rejecting a run for a party leadership, I guess.
And the other name I heard, and I didn't see this get reported publicly, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I feel like putting it out there, was Salem, the Squamish Nation councillor and prominent urbanist, who's been writing a lot about municipal politics and seems like could be a jolt of energy to Cope at this point in time, but yet.
Yeah, but like with that, I kind of wonder, like, why is that in his interest at all? Like, I actually think it would diminish his power and prestige to run with Cope. It'd be a get for Cope for sure, but I think that Kelsalem has an incredible role to play. It has a very substantial voice that is cultivated without gaining any kind of political office in the city. And so I don't necessarily think that it would have been the best decision for him, especially in this very crowded primary where he could have been painted as a vote splitter.
And maybe that's all it came down to. I know if you follow him closely enough, he's not the biggest fan of one city for, I feel like, largely interpersonal reasons. But, some of his writing has hinted at like the more ambitious urbanism Cope could be, and so there is like an ideological alignment there. But I think you're right that like maybe it was just a weighing of the balances, or maybe my sources were entirely wrong and I'm just making shit up for gossip on the podcast.
And we thank you for returning to us for whatever that ended up being.
Let's leave Vancouver now and look at some of the other municipalities that have candidates coming forward. Notably in Burnaby, the forever dominant Burnaby Citizens Association has announced who their council candidates will be. They are not running a mayoral candidate, and I think more interesting than who the new names are is the outgoing names are Alison Gu, Sav Dhaliwal, and Pietro Calandino, who are all opting to retire from local politics this year.
New candidates for the ruling party of Burnaby, and given recent trends, I would expect Burnaby's next city councillors: Ryan Irwin, Cindy Lee, Rhea Park, and Kiran Singh. So congratulations in advance, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of people are sad to see Alison Gu leave politics. She's, I think, was elected as like the youngest councillor in Burnaby, but has been a consistent voice for progressive urbanism in the city and really taking on a lot of different issues and things. So hopefully this isn't the end of her. I briefly thought, wouldn't it be great if she ran for mayor? But I feel like BCA is fine to just let Mike Hurley be the new Derek Corrigan.
Also, take solace.
Yeah.
If Moira proves anything, no one goes away.
And I should remind listeners that Burnaby Green Joe Keithley did cross to BCA in December. And so...
Of course.
That party is kind of dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can't beat him. Surrey First has announced a slate of candidates. Linda Ennis is their mayoral candidate, and Deb Antifaev, Clint Stewart, Janet Brown, and Mike Bose, who is currently listed as a likely candidate.
He's
not
a current
confirmed.
councillor, and he says he'll probably run again with them. So I can't imagine why they'd reject him. Interestingly, Surrey First also had named Taj Sandhu as a candidate for council, but has withdrawn him after it turned out Taj has listed their home address as Port Coquitlam. And apparently in some municipalities, they take offense when you have to cross a body of water to get to work.
Wow, what an interesting place it must be to live in those places. And speaking of naming things, they've considered naming a SkyTrain station after Doug McCallum.
Yeah, Linda Ennis announced this as a policy for her party, saying, I didn't always agree with him, but I want to recognize the important work he did in getting this forward, which I guess makes sense. And to which he said, I do not agree that a SkyTrain station should be named after me.
Which is hilarious. In particular, the reason that he has given, which is that basically you should auction off the naming rights so that you can raise revenue, which is amazing. I can just imagine renaming a SkyTrain station every, 20 years as the naming rights expire.
You mean you don't want to get off at Rogers Station? I mean, formerly Shaw Station.
I think there's an interesting idea. You could say this is the telecom station and just allow bidding only in the telecom space.
Cool.
You know what? Name it for him against his will. Just do it. It is actually like a legitimate thing to do because he has, I don't necessarily really do with tributes to currently living people all that often. I do think that McCallum has a substantial, role in history in creating this expansion of the SkyTrain, and that does deserve to be recognized somehow. If not that, then maybe name one of the SkyTrains after him.
While talking about Surrey, I should mention that Mike Starchuk's team, Imagine Surrey, has also named its council candidates William Lee, Kevin Wilkie, Narima Dela Cruz, Yusuf Aldabene. I apologize so much to people whose names I'm butchering. Ashiyana Hanif, Margaret Mumbanda, Perminder Chauhan, with more coming soon, and they also list Ollie, the doggo in charge of not dropping any balls.
Woof. Well,
he's the director of positivity and very good boy.
Is it spelled Pawsitivity?
You know it is.
Incredible. Given that we spent 15 minutes reading lists of names to you, we're going to depart from that and now read lists of names of organizations to you. In particular, this incredible list of parties that are registered for the municipality of Richmond. And they are, and we'll alternate because, of course, this would be too tiring to go through them all. Forward Richmond.
Action Richmond.
Advance Richmond.
Richmond Strong.
Community First Richmond.
Liberal Party of Richmond.
Richmond Rise.
One Richmond.
Richmond of Tomorrow.
Right Richmond.
Richmond United.
Save Richmond.
We Are Richmond.
Some of those parties are old, some are new. One doesn't exist.
Yes, we completely made it up. We will, honestly, post on social media. Let us know who you think we made up, and we'll tell you next time. Canby Report.
Across the region, there are a couple other new parties floating around. Langley also has a Langley Strong now. In Burnaby, the center-right One Burnaby has rebranded to Our Burnaby. I think not to be confused with One City.
The Surrey Civic Liberals and Burnaby Liberals have both established themselves, as well as Bright Future Vancouver.
I highly recommend clicking through to their Instagram page of their mayoral candidate, Muhammad Ahmed, for possibly Vancouver's first AI slop candidate.
Oh my god. I had not seen this before this moment. This is
Scroll down to the National Flag Day post, Matt.
This is a lot. Okay, I'm not as against AI as a lot of people, but I am against, like, complete bankrupt choices when it comes to graphic. Oh my, Harbor Center is square.
It's not even trying.
Why is it like this? And the orc is oh no. This is awful.
It's
It's
very funny.
Oh, man, I need a beer after that. And unfortunately, the old brewery site of Molson down by the foot of the Broad Street Bridge is being transformed into residential towers, because of course they are. This is Vancouver. I will, of course, bring up my favorite Beaverton headline: Mayor Gregor Robertson set to be redeveloped into condos. There are 5 industrial sites that the city is considering for rezoning. It strikes me as a little disingenuous that people can get so up in arms about one precious industrial lot that is the size of a small office building that still maintains a considerable amount of industrial space in addition to residential, while losing a massive industrial site. Not that I necessarily disagree, because we do need more housing, but we do also need industrial zones.
The problem is this isn't doing anything right now.
Sure, it is brownfield land right now.
It's also discontiguous, right? Like, it's just kind of an island of a vacant factory. So given the development of Sanok right there, I see value in doing something with this. Now, I think the mixed use idea could be the perfect solution here, because that many people, it'd be great to have some jobs for them where they could also just, like, work right there.
You don't say.
But the current status of that factory or former brewery is, it's not quite an eyesore because it's not the worst looking building, but it could be used productively.
I think it's a kind of a shame that you can't really take the big, I don't actually know whether they were like silos or brewing vats or whatever, or just like cooling towers, but like they were kind of iconic parts of Vancouver. They were certainly a part of Vancouver for the entire time that I was living there, and marked that transition into downtown along with that Trifoil building. But all things change, and Sanok is going to be a huge change to the area. I think it's a interesting proposal. I just hope that it can be done thoughtfully, and again, strong considerations for mixed use I think would be very good.
One thing that's not changing, because it was not probably done as thoughtfully as necessary, is a section of East Hastings where BC Housing was hoping to put 3 giant towers amid a bunch of mid and low rise kind of houses and apartments and like single family homes. Has council fully like shot down this proposal? I think the only abstention here was from Lucy Maloney, but council looked at these towers and went, too much, in part, especially because the amount the West Bank, Promatera, and BC Housing were looking at putting in towers of 39, 38, and 19 stories were unsupported by local amenities.
Yeah, and like that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Like you do kind of need to start redeveloping an area like this in toto rather than like piecemeal. This is why we have stuff like the official community plan. We have the Vancouver plan, and It's a huge mistake to, I mean, like, these things are huge. They're like twice as tall as the tallest building for like blocks.
The current zoning is a 12-story maximum. This is a 35-minute walk from Commercial Broadway SkyTrain station, the nearest transit, other than like the R5 up Hastings.
Yeah.
It's the kind of housing where you go, yeah, that's what the NIMBYs are afraid of. I'm not saying, like, even Peter Meisner is here saying, like, I try to be as pro-housing, and, like, I get what they're trying to do, but we need to find a way. So they haven't fully killed the project, council, I want to be clear. They did refer it back to the proponents to say, let's come up with something a little bit better that works for the community. And it's a tough call as someone who likes city council saying yes, but in this case, it's...
let it not be said that we are just complete shills for like developers. Here's looking at you, Vancouver, presumably, but no, we think that there are occasionally times when it also looks like very Italian fascist, like it does. If you look at it looks like Italian fascist design, like the arches and the balconies. I don't know. Wouldn't have been my choice. Design's important, and statements of design perhaps tell on themselves, I guess.
The downside of that is we will not be getting it's actually not too many, but some amount of social housing, which makes it harder to do what the city just did, which is to announce they're going to close 3 SROs in the downtown Granville Entertainment District. Officially, this is a public safety issue where the city has been wanting to close these for months, and they are going to do their best efforts to relocate the current residents. But critics kind of look at this and go, hey, FIFA's coming up. Is this more about safety of residents or about like cleaning up the downtown? And maybe it's both.
I mean, it was about safety of residents. Then, like, truly, you must find these people places to live that are not. If this action forces people onto the street, it is both morally bankrupt and abhorrent, but also self-defeating from the point of cleaning up the downtown, because if we don't want homeless people offending the eyes of foreign visitors, because God forbid we are honest about the fact that, like, Canada treats its most marginalized people amongst the worst in the world. It is a really misguided idea, and I really hope that this can be done with thoughtfulness and without negative impacts on the people who depend on these SROs as their housing.
Speaking of housing, the City Council has taken a big step forward and approved the Vancouver Official Development Plan, the first in the city's history.
Yes, so this is actually something that, like, do you understand the difference between an official development plan and a city plan?
It's one of those things I have to keep coming back to. The city plan is, as I'm kind of piecing it together, the vibes document. Here's what it would be great. The official development plan, given by the name, is a bit more official. It's been empowered, especially by the provincial legislation passed in 2024, Bill 18, that said, if your city has an official development plan, which we are requiring you to develop, and a project comes forward that's consistent with it, you can't have a public hearing on whether it goes forward or not, because people should not be vetoing housing and wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, and this is like, it is the official way to action the vibes of the city plan. And this is, I think, notable in particular because it very well could be the last hurrah of the citizens' filibuster in Vancouver. And I think, perhaps we are burying the lead, because I think this is probably the story, Ken Sim making totally unfounded allegations aside. This is, I think, probably the most consequential story that we're going to be covering today. But there is a huge, an important change, which is that not only does the city not have to hold public hearings, they are specifically barred from holding public hearings on things that meet certain stipulations in that official development plan. Which, to be clear, I am in favor of. This is a good document, and it is a good thing that City Council has passed this.
Yeah, so nothing in here is too much of a surprise as I look at the overall map of what the urban structure strategy is. There's the downtown core, there's kind of the Broadway plan is already in here. Some of those plans have already been highlighted. The 41st Ave becomes like a high density area. There's neighborhood centers across the city, and basically as you follow major transit routes, you get bigger housing. And when you get further from major transit routes, you have just multiplex areas because that's the provincial floor. And so there was some opposition to this, as there always is. It's kind of like the last chance everyone had who doesn't want this to go ahead to come and yell about it. And overall, I go, you got your yelling out, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Down at City Council, of course, city staff has recommended dropping Mayor Ken Sim's Bitcoin motion, as I alluded to earlier.
Yeah, doing things like an official development plan and everything else that the city staff have to do, especially as more of them are being laid off because the city is not giving them money to keep the staff they have, means they can't do all of the vanity projects that council has been throwing at them for the last year. Some of those are, I think, important motions, but it's just challenging, right? To be staff who keep getting, oh, now study this, now study that, now look at this. So staff finally came back and said, all right, you've told us to do a lot of things. We can't do them all. Here's a recommended prioritization. Some will go ahead, some will be, hopefully we can do them, and some not worth doing. The headline out of that was the Bitcoin motion needs to die because it's legally the city can't even do it if we wanted to.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing was wrong-headed to begin with, and leaving aside the fact that, of course, this was Mayor Ken Sim's baby. Of course, this was a flagship project of the Vibes mayoralty.
It was, quote, the hill he's willing to die on.
But, to be clear, Vancouver already has a massive problem with money laundering. It is a huge issue in the city.
Some would say it's our oldest industry.
Okay. And eventually we discovered fish. But before then, just money laundering.
And, shady land deals and speculative markets and lying about gold in foreign countries.
The German report was very...
Really?
It was so clear on the fact that Vancouver's three major problems, opiate addiction, rocketing real estate prices, and money laundering, particularly through our casinos, were a self-reinforcing triangle that, we shouldn't bolster. This is bolstering the problem. Why? I don't get it. This is completely wrong-headed. Speaking of wrong-headed and silly things that Vancouver has done, the parkade at the Vancouver airport, which I didn't know existed because I, like everyone else, take the train.
But you can't miss it. When you're taking the train in, it's that giant thing that's under construction wrap on the left, right beside the SkyTrain station.
Well,
so when you get off, you stare at this thing that's under construction that has been under construction since it was announced in 2018.
I'm sorry,
when
what way are you getting off the SkyTrain? I think you walk away.
Oh yeah, you walk away from it, but as you walk toward it, fine. When you turn around.
I just see an image of Ian falling for
I back out like a normal person. Oh, the airport decided in 2018 that they were going to have so many passengers coming that they needed to do a $9 billion expansion that included this parking lot with 2,000 parking stalls. It was paused because of the pandemic, and they are now admitting we are only just getting back to passenger volumes from before COVID, and we may never need this because it turns out the SkyTrain's really fucking convenient.
Yeah. Leaving aside the fact that for whatever reason buses are for poor people and trains are for everyone, that's just a common problem in transit planning where people are very reticent to take the bus but are fine with taking the train. The train is for everyone, and so people of all walks of life are happy to take it. A place where they can catch a cat. Like, it's just...
And another 24% of people take rideshare or cabs.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it's like, we had solved this problem before construction began.
so they've spent $200 million. It would cost $200 million more to finish. But in the interim, which they're not going to finish it, they just have a half parkade to deal with.
All those construction resources. It's just like, why do we do bad ideas? Why? And speaking of bad ideas, now, in addition to getting E. coli while swimming at Trout Lake, you can drown.
Budget cuts have mean we can't have lifeguards anymore. And in the words of Lord Farquaad, some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take.
So the sites that will no longer have supervision include Spanish Banks West, Spanish Banks East, Sunset, 3rd, and Trout Lake. The one that really surprises me there is Sunset, but honestly, was it so expensive to hire lifeguards for these places? I don't really understand why this was where we had to find economy as opposed to just reprioritizing stuff. Like, I don't know.
Zero means zero, Matthew, and zero means Car Free Day can't have any money. Oh, wait, actually, everyone fucking loves Car Free Day, so it gets some money.
Yes, thankfully, Car Free Days, that pseudo-annual event, given that has been canceled on a number of occasions previously, is saved thanks to Councilors Maloney and Orr. City Council voted to approve a one-time grant of $30,000 at a council meeting on March 10th, which means that there are going to be 2 car-free days that are going to be on September 5th on Commercial Drive and September 13th on Main Street. And honestly, they're great. They're really good. And I am frankly, like, living out in Toronto where, like, these car-free days, every neighborhood has one, and they are, like, a huge deal throughout the summer, and they're often multi-day events. They're not just single-day things. Get your fucking act together. Like, seriously, I don't understand why this isn't something that, like, the BIAs are not more interested in promoting, because they are a huge economic draw to the area. And, like, maybe City Council isn't, the correct vehicle for, like, ongoing funding of these things. Like, maybe the BIAs are, but man, it's a structural failure that, like, it is even contemplated that these events get canceled.
I'm glad they're back.
Yes.
Well, also coming to Vancouver possibly are some new boats to have unique usages. Extending its reach beyond its shores, Vancouver is seeking to regulate the seas. In Kitsilano, they are considering whether to allow a hydrotherapy barge that would be docked just outside the Vancouver Maritime Museum. And because this is Kitsilano, the NIMBYs have come out.
Oh, close to 1,000 people have signed a petition opposed to the Vancouver Maritime Museum's plan to allow this floating barge. This is a proposal for a 45-meter barge run by a company that has a similar spa barge in Victoria. This is Haven. It sounds Danish. I just wanted to say that I recently learned that Copenhagen in Danish is like, why have all the letters if you're not going to use them?
Like Worcestershire.
Worcestershire sauce is disgusting, both in spelling and in taste. And I, like Ken Sim on the Bitcoin Mountain, will die on that hill. That said, these kinds of spas are, like, it would be a change to the area. I don't dispute that. However, like, it's a marina for people with boats who are kind of definitionally doing pretty well.
A boat parking in a boat parking lot. Like, I've walked by Victoria so many times. It's just a structure there that's in the water. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. It doesn't have heavy traffic around it. Like, sometimes you see a couple people hanging out on the top deck in a swimsuit, and you're like, that looks cool. I'd love to do that, but, like, I don't get the opposition.
I haven't been to the one in Victoria. There is one run by a different company, at least so far as I know, in Montreal. I went to it on my bachelor party. It was incredible. I think it is a fantastic way for people to go and interact with waterfronts or historic canals, as the case may be in Montreal. But it's a way for people who don't have boat parking lot money and boat money to go enjoy the waterfront on a boat. And Sarah Kirby-Young, who is the councillor who brought forward this motion to allow the Haven barge, bringing it forward as a people-centered, low-impact waterfront activation, which is a phrase that makes me want truly to just, like, impale my forehead on a spike. But, like, it is, however, 3 hours for $100, not the cheapest, but also pretty in line with what, newish spas cost. I don't think that it's a terrible idea. And more importantly, perhaps, this will stabilize revenue for the Vancouver Maritime Museum, which has been facing rising costs over many years because of stagnation of provincial and municipal funding. Maritime history is important, and if that maritime history grows from beyond the pleasure boat parking lot that is currently in place to include a place where the riffraff can enjoy the sea, to all the people who oppose it, I say, get bent.
The other boat proposal coming to council, like I say, they want to regulate the seas.
And you raised this earlier, like, when we were talking beforehand. It's like, I don't know, rezoning is the thing that is contemplated here, because I was unaware that zoning could exist in the water. But then again, I am not a planning lawyer, so I assume lawyers have been involved and told them that this is correct.
Off the Vancouver Convention and Exhibition Center, Finnish company Sunburn Group is proposing, in partnership with Vancouver Harbour Flight Center and BC Pavilion Corporation, a 250-room floating hotel. This would be a 6-story ship, it looks like in the picture, that would include some publicly accessible restaurants, shops, spas, and viewing decks, as well as the hotel on it. They have a long history of building floating hotels, including the Royal Victoria Docks in London and Gibraltar. So
it should also be noted that, like, Vancouver has a severe deficit in hotel rooms. Like, there are not nearly enough of them, which is why this sort of hullabaloo is existing over whether or not to transform a building in the West End into one. But, like, I think that this is a much, as they say, more elegant solution for solving Vancouver's hotel problem. And so long as, I guess, the feds approve, I don't really know. Yeah.
It's maritime law.
Exactly. Seeing as how we know so little about maritime law, let's go basically about as far as you can get from the sea in Vancouver and head to Oak Ridge for our Vancouverata. Oak Ridge Park.
That's the new mall that is being developed with the high rises and everything you see there. But the original place, Oak Ridge Mall, holds a soft spot in many people in Vancouver's hearts, as it was the first indoor shopping mall in the city of Vancouver. It opened in 1959. The mall is honestly not particularly notable on its own, but like many things, it was the first. It helped develop the community there, particularly as in the post-war period, Vancouver started to fill in the forests with housing, the golf course. The golf course had been there for a little while, but Langara College and so forth. An interesting factoid, the mall has served as the location for TV shows like 21 Jump Street and Dead Like Me, and has been a crime scene. In 1989, a Brink security guard was shot in the throat by armed robbers who ran off with $500,000.
Also, in 2008, its underground parking lot was the scene of a gang-related murder. And frankly, given that the thing has been a major commercial center for as long as it has, I am surprised that there has only been two such incidents. Like, where people congregate, there will be crime. It's just a kind of natural fact that some people do crime, I also just wanted to say that listed in this article, which is a delight, which includes the delightful phrase, Oak Ridge Mall is leveling up into Oak Ridge Park, which, amazing. I truly appreciate the Dungeons and Dragonsification of our language. I am sure they rolled a 20 on their performance check when writing this. But I also just really like that they noted the presence of muffins, a shop that I have just such fond memories of from the Sunridge Mall in Calgary when I was growing up.
Oak Ridge is not on Oak Street, but the Oak Ridge neighborhood has always been quite diverse. It was one of the first areas for the city's Jewish population. And there's a little anecdote in this Monte Cristo article about someone noting that when they first moved to Vancouver, real estate told their father about a different part of Vancouver. This is a good neighborhood because no Jews or Chinese are allowed, whereas Oak Ridge was more welcoming.
Oof. Well, this brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Camber Report. Check out our show notes. There's going to be a lot of interesting links in there, including this Monte Cristo article. We are going to post a link to my interview / call-in segment that I did on CBC, where you can watch me look furtively away from the camera as I fail to follow the producer's directions to keep my eyes on the camera lens, and yet still offer basically very similar commentary to what I did today, though with perhaps more legal details and less rip-snorting anger. So I encourage you all to check that out. For Leg and Boot Media, I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield.
Good night.